the last team that we have to talk about, the Cleveland Browns. So you look at the state of the franchise for the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, this is still one of the most talented teams in the NFL from a talent standpoint. Like, they pretty much have no holes. They're loaded they're loaded when it comes to the offensive line. They have one of the best, if not the best, running back tandem in the league with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Look at the wide receiver position. Pretty solid. You have some pretty solid young wide receivers on the roster. Really, it comes down to Baker Mayfield. Okay, now Baker Mayfield's shoulder surgery went successful. He's expected to recover in the next 4 to 5 months. So by the time he comes back healthy, it's going to be time to figure out just what is Baker Mayfield made out of, because he still hasn't gotten that contract extension. And this upcoming season is going to be really big for Baker Mayfield, because when Baker Mayfield is playing at his best, the Cleveland Browns are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. As a matter of fact, they went 8-9 this past season. That was a giant disappointment because many people had high hopes for Cleveland going into this year. There were even some people who, before the season began, probably would have told you that the Browns were going to be in the conversation for winning the AFC. They were going to be in the conference championship game, competing with Kansas City to advance to the Super Bowl. Obviously, we know that didn't happen. The large reason why the Browns missed the playoffs this season was because they had a lot of inconsistency out of Baker Mayfield. And at this point of Baker Mayfield's career, you know what he is. He's not an elite quarterback. He's a very good quarterback at his best. He's a quarterback who can win a Super Bowl for you when he has the right pieces around him. When things are going right, that's when Baker Mayfield is at his best. But when things are going wrong around him and Baker Mayfield has to elevate the team, he can't really do it on a consistent basis. He is capable of doing it, but he's not capable of doing it every single week like a guy such as Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson are capable of being able to do. Those are two quarterbacks who can bring their team up when they're down every single week. Meanwhile, Baker Mayfield needs everything to go right. He needs the play calling to be good. He's not somebody who elevates the play caller. Like, great quarterbacks make the guy calling the plays look like a genius. Meanwhile, average quarterbacks are only as good as the guy calling the plays behind the play calling sheet. So for Baker Mayfield, this is a make or break season for him. And I expect the Cleveland Browns to bring in some competition for Baker Mayfield. Rather, they bring a quarterback in via free agency, or they draft a quarterback, because they could take the Philadelphia Eagles route, like when Philadelphia drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round of the draft not too long ago. And a lot of people were like, well, they already have Carson Wentz. And a lot of people hated the decision, and then we saw what happened to Carson Wentz. He ended up just failing in Philadelphia. He ended up just sizzling out, and then Jalen Hurts came in, and then it looks like Philadelphia has found their quarterback of the future in Jalen Hurts at the moment, with him leading them to the postseason. So you look at the Browns, like, there are just a lot of ways that they can approach the quarterback situation. But however, it is highly likely that Baker Mayfield will remain the starter with Cleveland. And then on top of that, defensively, the defense is still really good. You got Myles Garrett. We don't really know what Jadeveon Clowney's future is with the Cleveland Browns. Can they bring in another elite pass rusher to pair on the opposite side of Myles Garrett? Pretty much the only thing that you're looking for is adding more depth, and they even have a lot of depth. Like, they have a lot of depth in the secondary, at safety, at cornerback. So if you add another impact pass rusher on the other side of Myles Garrett, like, your defense is loaded. So for Cleveland, I mean, this is probably the most talented team in the AFC North, and this is probably the second most talented team in the AFC from roster standpoint, behind the Kansas City Chiefs. And even some people probably would say that they're even a more talented team than Kansas City when everybody's fully healthy, like the offensive line, the wide receivers, and whatnot. It just really comes down to the quarterback position. Now, Kevin Stefanski, there's some critics out on Kevin Stefanski. Some people think that he could end up having a similar career path of Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer, pretty good defensive-minded coach. And during his time in Minnesota, it wasn't really bad. He just was inconsistent. He could never really have Minnesota in a consistent point where they were consistent contender year in and year out. You have to wonder if Kevin Stefanski's coaching career is going to have a similar fate, because the play calling this year was kind of questionable. There will be times when the rain game was going, and then instead of continuing with the rain game, he would try to throw the football at Baker Mayfield. Even though you do have to throw the football every once in a while, despite how much success you have on the ground to keep the defense off balance, you really shouldn't be getting away with what works, okay? Like, if the run game's working, why would you shy away from it? Especially when you have Nick Chubb, who is a top 5 back in the league, trucking, okay? Then you look at how to properly maximize Baker Mayfield's strengths, because Baker Mayfield's strengths weren't really on display too many times this past season. His weaknesses were on full display, though. His accuracy was bad at times, and also the injury that Baker Mayfield sustained did play a huge part in that. And Kevin Stefanski's play calling also played a huge part in why Baker Mayfield's career kind of has been at a standstill like it is now, because we thought after the campaign that Baker Mayfield had the previous season that he was going to be on the uptrend, and he really just regressed, and the large reason for that is due to injuries. But you also have to give a lot of the blame to Kevin Stefanski, because he didn't really put Baker Mayfield in a lot of situations to succeed, and really the Browns are only going to go as far as Baker Mayfield takes them, because there's only so much they can do, because their roster pretty much is maxed out. I don't really think that the Browns can get any better, and that's not a knock on the Browns. It's just that they're already so good now from a talent standpoint. What further can they do to get even better? They're already one of the top 3, top 5 most talented teams in the NFL. And on top of that, now with them missing the playoffs, you got to wonder how are they going to approach free agency, because they still do have cap space. Because you got to remember, when you have a young quarterback who is still on their first deal, that still gives you a lot of leeway and a lot of cap space to still go out and get an impact free agent. So for the Browns, their franchise right now is still in a good spot, in my opinion. Obviously, the season didn't really go how a lot of people expected it to go for the Browns, because this was the first time, it seems like, ever that the Cleveland Browns actually had expectations going into the season, and not just expectations to make it to the playoffs, but expectations to make it to a Super Bowl. And you got to wonder if those same expectations are going to be present going into the 2022 NFL season. But for the state of the franchise for the Cleveland Browns right now, I still believe that it's in a very good spot. I still believe that Browns fans have a lot of reasons to be hopeful, and a lot of reasons to continue to see the Browns as a Super Bowl contender. Now, I don't know if I would put them in my Super Bowl bubble as of right now. I still need to see how the remainder of Baker Mayfield's recovery goes, but there are going to be many people around the time of August before the season starts who are going to get back on the Cleveland Browns hype train, because you just look at how talented this roster is. It's just no way you can not include Cleveland in that discussion. It really just comes down to Baker Mayfield's performance. So you guys let me know how you guys feel about the state of the franchise for the Cleveland Browns. And this is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you go ahead, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more college football videos and NFL content. Also, make sure that you check out the JT Sports Podcast. Every video that is uploaded on the channel is available in audio format on every single podcasting platform: Spotify Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. All you got to do is type in the JT Sports Podcast on any podcasting service and it should pop up. Leave 5-star review, or you can go to the description, scroll down a little bit, and the links to my Spotify and Apple podcast links should be there for you guys to go ahead and check it out. And I appreciate you guys for tuning in to this episode of the JT Sports Podcast.